Yes, good evening everyone. On this occasion and 73rd Sunday Sahitya Satsang, I request Professor G. A. Gansham sir, founder and general secretary of iSPELL, to start the event. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, Pramod. Good evening, namaste, adab, khushamdeed to all those who have assembled on this platform of iSPELL today with the help of Zoom. Friends, indeed, it's an honor and pleasure to be there on the platform of iSPELL all the time. And today we are here to witness the 73rd Sunday Sahitya Satsang, which happens to be the flagship program of Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature, known by its acronym iSPELL. Friends, yesterday we have celebrated Saraswati Puja, the Vasant Panchami, and today we got a shocking news. The voice of the world, known as Lata Mangeshkar, departed to the heavenly abode today. And the voice has become the cosmic voice now. The voice which we have enjoyed on this global platform has now become the cosmic voice of the universe. And that voice is going to bring many more new things in our lives also. She is there always with all of us. And those who have been in the process of art, music, culture, and literature, they have enjoyed her voice like anything. And she is there with every one of us. And the music has the synonym by name Lata Mangeshkar, who has not only spelled but made the audience spellbound. And today, the greatest homage that we can render to Lataji is in the form of having academic deliberation. And this academic deliberation will be a most important homage to Lataji. So we have with us today Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi, who is the speaker of today's Sunday Sahitya Satsang. Indeed, a person is always needed, not only to lead us, but at the same time to master the event. And the event has to be mastered in such a great way as if the person becomes the captain of the ship. And today we have with us Dr. Vipula Mathur as the captain of the ship in the form of master of the ceremonies. She is a PhD and a trained graduate teacher. She has taught for nearly 1.5 decades as an educator in various engineering colleges and degree colleges. She has even taught in Institute of Hotel Management. Being a soft skill trainer, she has completed 2 NPTEL programs. At the same time, she has presented various papers in the national and international conferences and published papers in the Careless journals. Being a visiting faculty in the Institute of Hotel Management, Dr. Vipula Mathur has abundance of knowledge, and the skill, which is known to be the hard one, but it is called a soft skill, she has mastered it. She is associated with the Indira Gandhi National Open University as the counselor, and at the same time, she is associated with TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. With this little introduction about Vipula Mathur, today I hand over the event to Dr. Vipula Mathur to proceed further. Dr. Vipula, the stage is all yours. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the kind and warm introduction. A very good evening to all. The key to pursuing excellence is to embrace an organic, long-term learning process and not to live in a shell of static, safe mediocrity. Usually, growth comes at the expense of previous comfort or safety. So, with this quote of Josh Witkin, let's gear up for our auspicious 73rd Sunday Sahitya Satsang on pedagogical stylistics, an approach to promote language learning. Today, in this August gathering, we are fortunate to have such distinguished and erudite academicians amidst us. Although the welcome part has been initiated by Ghansham sir, still, once again, on the behalf of iSPELL family, I extend a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker, respected Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi, Assistant Professor, Department of Language and Literature, Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, Katra, our chairperson, respected Dr. Archana Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of English, BPT Government PG College, North Bastar, Kanker, Chhattisgarh. All eminent professors, research scholars, and members of iSPELL Forum. Before commencing, I would like to share a bit about iSPELL. As we all know, iSPELL is an Indian society for the promotion of English language and literature, popularly known by the acronym iSPELL, was founded by the like-minded fraternity of English with the motto, facilitate to elevate the taste and bliss in the field of English literature. iSPELL organizes events every month to share and impart expertise of renowned academicians and its members to the fraternity and stakeholders. iSPELL believes that the need of the hour is to blend the trends and mend the minds, and one can improve and elevate his or her abilities once opportunities are made available. So, in today's event, we have a very esteemed guest among us, Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi, and I would like to share Sir's brief introduction. Dr. Amitabh Vikram sir is a Harvard University certified in the art of writing and public speaking and a university faculty specialized in linguistics and literature at Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, India. His research interests include language documentation, writing descriptive grammars, and the preservation of rare and endangered languages in South Asia. For prestigious academia and Udemy, Sir has framed several courses on theory of academia, literary criticism, and Udemy. The National Digital Library of India, that is NDLI, Ministry of Education, India, features his 19 lectures in the public domain. Also, the UNESCO Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger refers to his two works on the Bhadarwahi language on its official website. His published books are stored in the libraries of University of Stanford and Princeton. Sir has contributed numerous papers in more than 180 research chapters, journals, and scopus, chiefly EBSCO and encyclopedias published by Springer, Sage, and ABC Glico publications. Sir has published several books including Grammar of Sarazi, Hadoti, and Bhadarwahi. Also, as a poet, he has penned down various poems in different anthologies, journals, and magazines worldwide. Recently, his poem Mother has been published as a prologue to the Motherhood and War by Palgrave Macmillan Press. So, Sir is going to share with us an interesting discourse on pedagogical stylistics, an approach to promote language learning. Pedagogical stylistics looks at employing stylistic analysis in teaching with the aim of enabling students to better understand literature, language, and also improving their language acquisition. It enhances the way we think about language and its uses. Thus, the stylistic process, examining the creativity of language use, develops our understanding of literature. So, now without taking much time, I would like to invite Amitabh sir to address us, please. Sir, please. Amitabh sir.
Please unmute me. Yes,
Yes, sir,
I think yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your kind introduction, and I welcome all the participants who have joined here to listen to me. I'm sharing my my screen. Yes, slideshow. So I hope that you are seeing the slide all.
Yes, sir.
Visible.
Yeah. So this is the title of my presentation: Pedagogical Stylistics, an approach to promote language learning. So as you can see that this title is divided into two parts, and the focus is on learning, language learning, and I'm dealing with the teaching learning aspect with respect to stylistics. To start with, we try to understand what is stylistics. Then we will try to understand what is pedagogical stylistics. So when we start a topic, or when we start researching or learning a topic, then I always tell my students that if you go to the etymology of a particular word, then that is the good start. Or you go for the various definitions which are associated with the particular word, then it is also a good start. So when we look at this etymology, how this word is formed, then we also get so many things about it. So when we look at this word stylistics, then we find that there is a word style in it, and stylist and ICS. This suffix ICS is quite fascinating, and it is not only attached here with stylistics, but when we think about different disciplines, let's say mathematics, linguistics, physics, then we also find this this ending ICS. So the bottom line is that something very significant is associated with this suffix ICS, and it has some role to play when we try to define stylistics. So the meaning of this suffix is the scientific study of. So when it comes to physics, then the scientific study of motion, physical elements. When it comes to linguistics, then the scientific study of language science. And when it comes to stylistics, then it is again a scientific study of style. Now, unfortunately, when you type the word style on Google search and try to look at the images, then mostly you will find the images of hair cutting salons, scissors, fine barbers, they are doing something. So that is the unfortunate part, that the style is now associated with hairstyle, or with the stuff that is associated with a beauty parlor. But when it comes to stylistics, we are fortunate enough that we do away with that style, and we are talking about the writing style, we are talking about the speaking style, or we are talking about the register. Now this word register is quite important because every field has its vocabulary. So we also know it as jargon. For example, when it comes to linguistics, then we use the jargon like phoneme, morpheme, fine syntax, tree diagrams, allophones. So when it comes to stylistics, then obviously we have stylistic devices, various stylistic devices that are there. Then we have different terms which are associated. Let's say defamiliarization, that is a term associated with Russian formalism. Fine. So this is like these words are actually jargons of stylistics. And when it comes to writing, then obviously we try to find out the style of different writers. That is one approach to stylistics. But at the same time, stylistics can study anything when we look at the broader view. So it's not only the case that only a novel we can analyze, only a poetry we can analyze, but we can even analyze the language of newspaper, the language of advertisements, so anything we can analyze using scientific methodology. So this word scientific is quite important because here the word scientific does not mean that we require some laboratory, we require test tubes, we require some magical lotion. That's not the meaning, but scientific here means the objectivity that is associated with this field. So a practitioner of stylistics is a stylist or stylician, preferably in academia, we use the term stylician than the stylist. So this is various things which are associated with the word stylistics. Now, why stylistics? Why do we require stylistics? So you have at one plane you have linguistics, and you have on another plane literature. So like person A and person B, and both the persons are quite stubborn. Like so, there is no meeting point. So linguistics and linguists, they think, okay, why do we require literature? Literary people, they think, okay, we are literary people, so why do we require linguistics? So this stylistics is like a bridge. It functions like a bridge, or if you consider this metaphor, person A, person B, and there is no meeting point, then stylistics is like a matchmaker. So like stylistics uh, is functioning as a bridge between linguistics and literature. Now, incidentally, when I talk about these two things, linguistics and literature, so when it comes to linguistics, then uh, there is a person, the founder of modern linguistics, named Faninandi Saussure, and there is a book under his name, that is Course in General Linguistics, published in 1916. So Saussure said one thing very significant. He says that spoken is primary, language, writing secondary. When it comes to language, then spoken is primary and writing secondary. That means the focus of a linguist must be on the spoken language rather than the written one. So we do not have any problem as a linguist, because we know that if we just introspect that what comes first. So we know, like, first we acquire spoken language, and once we enter into some formal institution like primary school, then we learn the writing. So that way we do not have any problem with the Saussure's saying that spoken is primary, writing secondary. So when we think about linguistics, then most of the time we are thinking about the spoken part. And when it comes to literature, most of the time we think about written literature. So literature means written literature, though we have oral literatures as well, but mostly our thinking is associated with something that is written. So here again, two planes are meeting. So one is like spoken, another one is written, and stylistics is again functioning, working as a bridge. So being a stylist or being a stylician, you can analyze even an interview, and even like a movie, a dialogue, so you can analyze anything. So you have two things like literature. Literature is like textual, and linguistics provides you the necessary tools to analyze that. So when we look at the nature of these two disciplines, then we find that literature is subjective. Subjectivity is appreciated in literature. So you have various interpretations, and you have various interpretive communities as well, said by Stanley Fish. We will discuss that. And but in linguistics, subjectivity is discouraged, so objectivity is emphasized, and analysis, rigorous analysis, is more important than individual interpretations. So here, at surface level, you find like how can two different disciplines, which are so diverse in their nature, in their function, how they can meet. So it's like a wonder. It's like a wonder, and it's a wonderful thing that stylistics comes here and rescue us, and like becomes a meeting point of linguistics and literature. And then and because even we talk about literature, and we say like literature is mostly in written language, then also we know that it is language. So if there is no language, there is no literature, irrespective of the fact whether it is oral literature or written literature. Sometimes hardcore literature teacher, generally they argue that why do we require linguistics? So linguistics is simply the science of language. Linguistics is simply the study of language. Scientific study of language is linguistics. So if you know certain tools, if you understand language better, then it is quite obvious that you can have a better interpretation. And many flaws which are associated with subjective interpretation, you can do away with them. So there is no problem with linguistics, or you should not feel intimidated with linguistic theories uh, applying to literature. So the aim, like why stylistics, why we have, and what is the need of stylistics, then basically uh, when we apply stylistics to literature, then generally we provide our analysis 3 R's. And what are these 3 R's? Like, we want to be more accurate in our interpretation, and in terms of Simpson, then the 3 R's are like our interpretation, our analysis will become rigorous, retrievable, and replicable. So these things are associated. We want to be more precise in our interpretation. What we are saying, why we are saying, we have a proof for that. And we want to do away with the prison house of intuition, because there is a possibility that you are trying to interpret a text differently, but that is not a valid interpretation. For example, there is a text by William Black, and that's Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright. And it's a short poem, and it's like much anthologized. So if someone provides an interpretation and someone just take care of his or her subjectivity, and person says like Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright is a dietary problem, like someone who has killed a tiger and then consumed the meat of the tiger, and now the person has excruciating pain in the stomach, and the person is describing that pain in the poem Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright. So you will say like, this is my interpretation, you must respect my subjectivity, but whether it is valid or not. So a person who is an interpreter, not the translator, the person who is interpreting in the act of interpretation, providing this interpretation, then it's like a bogus interpretation. It has no validity. So stylistics basically provide precision of reference rather than the precision of interpretation. So that is one important point according to Widdowson. Then it provides like more accurate interpretation. Accurate in a sense, like if other person is also reading, then the person cannot go in a very different direction. Person can add something to that, but will not go in a different direction. And if the person is saying something different, then person also providing some linguistic proof, evidence. So language becomes the evidence. For example, one fine day, you will say like, I am a French speaker, I know French. Then your audience will definitely ask you a question. If you know French, then say something in French. So you start saying something in French. So that thing will become your evidence. This thing will become your proof. So so for your interpretation, merely a subjective interpretation has no value if you are not providing language evidence. So that thing is to be done very nicely once you take care of stylistic interpretation. So to provide an escape from the prison house of intuition and a method of providing a clear presentation of a reading using an appropriate and contemporary linguistic framework. So these 3 are chief aims of stylistics. Further, stylistics does not mean or does not propagate merely formalism, though the focus is on formalism. But under stylistics, we have this critical discourse analysis as well, where we take care of issues such as power and gender. So the social issues are also taken care of. So critical discourse analysis is basically a big umbrella term where you have ethnography, you have a place for ethnography, you have critical linguistic analysis, and you have other things like theories from social sciences that are taken care of. So it's not the case like once you are doing stylistics, then you are solely focusing on language. Language is important. Language becomes the evidence, but it is not the case. You are also dealing with these theories related to language and power, language and gender, and other thing. At the same time, once you are doing stylistics, then reading has given much emphasis. So stylistics has placed great emphasis on the role of the reader and her contextual background. So contextual background is important. You are reading a work, and you are reading a work written by some writer, let's say a European writer, but what is the context? Like, you are analyzing it. So similarly, you are adding from your own context, you are adding from your own experience. So contextualization is quite important. So that is again, like, we are not simply working on let's say a blind text, only looking at linguistic or language evidence. That we can also do, there is no problem in that. But at the same time, you are also free to um, provide your interpretation, more evidence from this contextual background. At the same time, theorizing the reading and writing that occurs as a reader constructs textual meaning. So that is, like, again important. Reading and writing, from reading and writing, the future of cognitive poetics. So that is again important. So this reading and writing, generally these two skills are the focus of stylistics. So because these are associated as well, because when we talk about four skills like LSRW skills, then listening and speaking, they are closely associated with, and then reading and writing, they are closely associated with. So one thing, when I talk about reading and writing, comes into my mind, that is given by Cummins. He talks about BICS and CALP. So there is a distinction between BICS and CALP. So BICS is like basic interpersonal communication skills. And when it comes to writing, he talks about CALP. That is like cognitive, CALP, cognitive analytical language proficiency. So what he says, like, there is a difference between speaking and this reading and writing activity. So you can say that you are a proficient speaker, uh, but uh, but you can't say like I'm a proficient writer, because each day you learn something, some new tricks in writing. So it's not the case like writing is done once forever. So it's like each day you learn certain things, each day you learn how to play with the syntax. And that's why like it is like quite a continuous activity. It is always in the process of becoming. This writing is always in the process of becoming, reading is always in the process of becoming. So the process thing is associated with reading and writing, and the product thing is associated with listening and speaking. That is the distinction made by Cummings. So that we need to focus once we do stylistics. That means like a good reader is always a good writer. So there is a saying like a good reader is always a good writer. That means if you are a good reader, then automatically you will become a good writer. So that thing can also be uh, tapped once we do a stylistic analysis. Now, one freedom that stylistics provides us, that is like we are moving away from authorial authority. So in terms of Stanley Fish, we have this interpretive communities, and Stockwell's talk about the same discourse communities, and the Birds talks about like intertextual reader. So again, like the meaning is associated, uh, the discourse communities, interpretive communities, intertextual readers. So the meaning is like we are not taking care of, we are not giving more emphasis to the author's voice, but we are giving more emphasis to the interpretation that is validated by the interpretive communities. So that becomes more important. So many people they say that Derrida is Derrida is difficult to read, or Bloom is difficult to read, or even Stanley Fish is difficult to read and understand. But still, you can't say like, because it's very difficult to understand Derrida, so whatever Derrida is saying is meaningless. We can't say this. And why we can't say this? Because whatever things are said by Derrida, Bloom, or Fish even, they are validated. They are validated by interpretive communities. And who are the part of actually these interpretive communities? Yes, you and I are the part of interpretive communities. Editors of the journals, they are the part of interpretive communities. Authors of the books, they are the part of interpretive communities. Other people who are associated with, like professors, teachers who are teaching literature, they are the part of interpretive communities. So basically we are creating, we are the part of a discourse, discourse communities. So here, like when we are meeting 50 people, 100 people on this platform, then we create a discourse community, because what I say, you understand, what you say, I understand. So when you provide an interpretation, let's say tiger, tiger, burning bright is a dietary problem, then obviously such type of interpretation is not validated by interpretive communities. It is not validated by discourse community. As well, like intertextual, you don't find any intertextual evidence as well. That merely, if we simply say, if we simply go for words like tiger, tiger, burning bright, and simply say like it is a dietary problem, then again it is not intertextual, because doing stylistics means like you are moving from one text to another text, then from that text to another text. So always you are in the process of moving. So there is no final interpretation as such. So you have written a good piece of writing, and it is a published one, but later on there is a possibility that someone else can provide a different interpretation. So that possibility is always there, because intertextuality is an open thing. It is never ended. So it's like a labyrinth, like there is no ending to that. Now we'll move to this pedagogical stylistics. So we have a brief view like why stylistics and why do we require. Now, when we attach this adjective pedagogical before stylistics, then it has different value. That means stylistics is a discipline, but this pedagogical stylistics is basically a teaching model. So it's not a discipline like stylistics. Pedagogical stylistic is just a part of it, and it is a teaching model. And why do we require that teaching model? Because now we have a piece of work, let's say a work written by Shakespeare, a work by Milton, a work by any contemporary writer, let's say Paulo Coelho, and we have many interpretations. And students are reading those interpretations in the form of a guidebook, in the form of PDF files, or on online. But if they are reading something that is said by other people, then what will happen to critical thinking? So in order to take care of that critical thinking, to make your students critical thinkers, generally we require a model, so that they will not produce a copy of a copy and a copy of a copy always in the examination, but they will produce something new, something creative, something innovative. And for that, we require this pedagogical stylistics to encourage both student and to spread awareness of language. That is one thing. And it provides an understanding of the interaction between text. That is also there. And the intertextuality, to read between text and to find out the positioning of a particular text in some socio-historical background. So that is also associated with it. So it's not like you are jumping from or hopping from one text to another, but also you are situating a text into some socio-historical context. That is also a possibility. But again, sometimes this type of like positioning a text in a certain socio-historical context becomes problematic, because nowadays we have swarms of thesis on comparison or comparative literature. So like what the students are doing, like they are picking up two texts like retelling of Mahabharata, retelling of Ramayana. Now retelling of Mahabharata, retelling of Ramayana, one Mahabharata was written thousands of years back, and retelling is like some like making the older text with some play in a new text. And then you are talking about like the 5,000 years back written Mahabharata lacks democratic values. So like there was no democracy during that time. So that type of interpretation you provide and that type of comparison if you do, then I don't know like how much valid, because even if you just compare two things, like a coin you find 5,000 years back and a coin recently minted, Then you compare like 5,000 years coin has these features and recently minted coin has these features. So obviously you are able to find some comparison. You can make comparison, you can find some faults with the old, or you will find some some advancement or something good with the new one. But that's again like it's like a problematic thing, and we need to have a debate on this, that whether such type of comparison is really required or not between like two texts. So and comparing that text with respect to present day values that are associated with that. So that is a different thing. But again, like we have this facility, that we can find out, we can put a text in some socio-historical background, we can position it. So basically, why we require pedagogical stylistics? Because stylicians are really the only people equipped to teach literature itself. That is said by Stockwell, and it is like it's like very revolutionary statement, that if you are not equipped with the stylistics, then you are not eligible to teach literature. So this is one point of view that we have. So but stylistics or pedagogical stylistics is really essential if you really want to make your student think, if you want that your students will become a future critical thinker, then this pedagogical stylistics is really required. Then there are certain aims which are associated with pedagogical stylistics. So they are like this particular pedagogy encourages an approach that is sensitive to language and context and enables a student to understand how a text operates rather than just explain what it says. So this question, why, is more important in literature than what? What it says means you are simply paraphrasing what the author has said. You have not moved ahead. And if you want to move ahead, then you need to drop this question, what this text says. And you need to question differently how a text operates, how a text functions. So I don't know many people, they agree on this or not, but nowadays there is a lack, there is a shortage of intelligent questions. So students, they are reading a text and they are simply paraphrasing what is there in the text. So lots of theses you find like simply the paraphrase, and there is no critical thinking, there is no questioning, there is no arguing with the text. They are not arguing, they are simply just in the process of paraphrasing, this said this, and like in bits and pieces they provide some citations by other people, and then the thesis is done. So again, like this pedagogical stylistics is quite crucial, quite important. It teaches us how a text operates, that is important thing. And we have this quotation by McRae and Vithamani. The concentration of how a text expresses what it says to reach a fuller understanding of what it says and why. So that is again like why it says what it says, or how a text operates, that will also tell us like what it says, why. So literary texts, like all language products, are constructed from everyday language. So here, like we are just we are not believing in a hierarchy, like literary text is something special. Once we are dealing with the stylistics, then we are just doing away with hierarchy. Like literary text is like any other text. So we can analyze it, we can have a precise interpretation, we can have accurate interpretation, we can follow the 3 R's given by Simpsons. That is quite possible. Then literary texts are not treated as mysterious boxes of hidden secrets, waiting for the skilled critic to decode them. So it's not like, again, the hierarchy between something that is the oral language and the written language. Yeah, definitely. Once you write something, and once you write as a writer, then you take care of your language. You have time to phrase, rephrase, and edit, re-edit many times. And obviously, when we follow the principle of defamiliarization given by Sholsky, that what makes literature literature, then the answer is literariness. Literariness makes literature literature. And what is this literariness? Like doing away with the ordinary. So something that is said very ordinarily, you try to make it, different. For example, you say like, why are you laughing? So that is like quite a direct thing. Why are you laughing? And if you say, what is the reason behind your risible? So it's like indirect way of saying. So making ordinary thing strange. Fine, defamiliarization, or like, why are you lost? So why are you lost is like very direct. So and you say like, why are you looking like an envelope without an address? Now this is like making ordinary thing strange. So that type of thing we find in literature. But again, we are not falling in the trap of that literary text is something like very different from the everyday language. We have tools, we can analyze it, we can appreciate the beauty, we can find faults with that if we have this stylistics tools. And the pedagogical stylistics is basically the teacher is teaching his or her students equipped with these tools that they can apply anytime. So the benefit of this pedagogical stylistic is like it is student-centered activity basically. So we in any seminar on education, we talk about like classes should be student-centered. It should not be lecture-based. So basically, it is a solution to that. Like, okay, you want your student a thinking being. Okay, so we have a solution. Your students will become thinking being, and teach them stylistics. They will become a good thinker. They can analyze language, any type of language. So students will become an insider. So it's not like there is a difference between the author and the reader. So even like, because they treat and once they work on that text, then particularly they feel like it is a custom, like we have various shows on Discovery, like History Channel, like custom cars. So like the work, the authority will collapse and it will become a custom work. So like, because you will also work on that particular work written by an author, and you are not simply believing in the authority of the author, you are analyzing the text using those tools. So you become an insider. So the author will become a fellow to you, and you try to analyze that. So it's a process oriented, because students continuously they work on that. Then attention is shifted away from teaching text to enabling students. So that is again quite important. You are not simply teaching, because again, teaching and learning, then obviously teaching has an upper hand. That's quite important. And incidentally, I remember like there is a debate among academicians, educationalists. They feel that gradually the machine technology will take over teachers, and teachers will no longer be required. But there are three important things that I want to discuss in this context. Like, one thing is knowledge, another thing is information, another thing is wisdom. So what a book is providing you is simply information, but simple information is of no good. So here comes the teacher. The function of the teacher is to transform information into knowledge. So you know what to do with that information. This machine does not know what to do with that information. The book does not know what to do with that information. But as a human being, as a thinking being, you know like how to channelize that information into the benefit of the society. So there comes the role of the teacher. And how to transform knowledge into wisdom, then you require some spiritual guru, a real guru, not a con man, and then that person will tell you that how to transform knowledge into wisdom. So again, we are enabling our students. So they are not simply a box who have lots of information, but they do not know what to do with that information. So here comes the role of the teacher, and stylistics is assisting student-centered activity. At the same time, it enabling a student to how to read properly and how to process a text. So this textual intervention is there in pedagogical stylistics. And what is this textual intervention? So a heuristic interactive activity, that means like discovery activity. Once you read a text, then always you are in the process of meaning making. You are interacting with the text. You are questioning the text. You are arguing with the text. You are rewriting and creating a text in a manner. And the act of reading has significant creative play in the search for alternative and counter representation of textual reality, and dialogism. So there is a dialogue between you and text. There is an argument going on between you and text. And we have a term given by Bhaktin, that is the heteroglossia, like multiple meanings associated with the text. So it teaches you how to read actually a text. And readers are and must be active creators of meaning when we deal with this textual intervention. And that understanding of how a text operates can best be achieved. So we recreate text in number of context. Now I give you some example, like all this theory, how that theoretical thing that I have mentioned previously can be applicable to any text, or what you need to do. So this is just one example, like it is only one example, and there are 100 other ways to treat a text. So here, this is an excerpt, one paragraph or few sentences from the novel Mrs. Dalloway. And what it says, like, Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself, for Lucy had her work cut out for her. The doors would be taken off their hinges. Rumpelmayer's men were coming, and then, thought Clarissa Dalloway, what a morning, fresh, as if issued to children on a beach. So, sorry, a bench. So here it's a text, and you are teaching pedagogical stylistic, you are dealing with pedagogical stylistics. So you can ask, like, okay, first you can just try to find out like the nouns and pronouns that are associated in this particular paragraph. So the students will they will do some interactive activity. They will find like Mrs. Dalloway is one such word, she is another such word, herself is another such word, then Lucy, then her, then again her, then there, then Rumpelmayer's men, Clarissa Dalloway. Then you can ask like, at one place you have Mrs. Dalloway, at another place in the third line you have Clarissa Dalloway. Why is it so? So the student will come with different answers, but here like it is because the person who is thinking about himself. So like thought. So if I'm thinking about myself, then definitely I will not use that Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi is thinking about himself. I will simply say like, okay, I'm thinking about myself, or Amitabh is thinking. So that type of thing is there. You can show like what is the difference here. Like here, the third person, like someone is telling about Mrs. Dalloway, and in the next in this line, like it is shown that Clarissa Dalloway is thinking about herself. So that's why like first name is also mentioned here, and their salutation is mentioned, but here salutation is not mentioned. That type of thing you can also tell. Again, you can make a comparison like why in the first sentence you have Mrs. Dalloway, and why in the second sentence you have Lucy. So again, like there is no salutation before Lucy. So that means like Lucy is a name of like a maid that is there, and Mrs. Dalloway is the relationship between like master and servant, that is between Mrs. Dalloway and Lucy. And that's why like the type of work they are doing, like very starting, like Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. So something aesthetic value is associated with buying the flower herself. It is not like you are buying a 2 kilogram sugar, that sort of thing. So it's like a very aesthetic thing, something very more important. And Lucy had her work cut out for her. Fine. So Lucy will do the work that is naturally suited for her. And what she will do, she'll do some important work that's there. So these are the things that will become the starting point. Because when I teach my students, then I always tell my student that meaning is not associated in the center. Meaning is always associated in the margin. So when I say meaning is always associated in the margin, that means more meaning. The general meaning, the common meaning is in the center. But if you want to become more meaningful, then you just try to move from center to the margin, and then you can have better interpretation. So those words, monosyllabic words, those functional words, you need to pay more attention to them rather than the content word. The content words are like nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and verbs. So you need to focus on the functional words, like what a connective is doing here, what a preposition is doing here, uh, these type of what an auxiliary is doing here. So that type of words are also important, and you need to cross question. For example, like you can also teach a student like, okay, the types of punctuation marks that are there in this piece, and what is their function. So even like 4 types of different punctuation marks are used. Like you have a full stop, regular full stop, uh, then you have a semicolon after hinges, then you have apostrophe s like Rumpelmayer's man. Fine. Then you have commas, then you have a hyphen like morning fresh. So again, like if you tell your students to pay attention to these things, then they will come with more meaningfulness. They can refine their interpretation. I'm just giving you examples like what type of questions or what makes a person more critical, not in terms of medical, like critically ill, but more careful reader. So similarly, the topic, like shifting of the topic, like you can teach your students like how a topic shifts. So here there is like a very like starting of any ordinary short story. I read it for you. Once upon a time, there was a merchant with 2 sons. The older son wanted to be a scholar. He spent his time reading and studying. As for the younger son, he preferred to travel and see the world. Now again, like in the first sentence, you have 2 topics, a merchant and 2 sons. And then in the second sentence, you have a shift off. Like you are not talking about merchant anymore. You are talking about the older son. So there is a shift of topic here. And then the third sentence is again the extension of the same topic, the older son. So we have like he spent his time reading and studying. And then we have another topic shift. So even like you have 4, not more than 4 uh, sentences here, but the topic is continuously shifting. So like when there is a piece of writing, then you can see like how many times a proper noun, a common noun is the topic. That means that thing is the focus of that particular thing. So that will also tell you about the narrative style that you can do. You can also tell your students like why the writer is changing tenses so frequently, like sometimes a past tense, then from past to present. If there is a shift like that, then there is some purpose. So what is the purpose for that shift? So you can also ask like your students that pay attention to time factor, because if they start paying attention to time, if they start paying attention to space, they can also make more meaning. So that you can also tell your student. So any text is basically constructed by using signs, and we have a linguist and language philosopher Ferdinand de Saussure, and he says like everything depends upon relations, and particularly this relation is like how each morpheme or how each word interacts with other word. So similarly, like how words they interact with each other, that is important. And you can also take this statement, everything depends upon relation, to our day-to-day relation that we have with other people. So we know like how important is our family, and how important are our friends. So again, that way it's like it's a general statement, everything depends upon relations. And when it comes to a narrative, when it comes to a statement, then obviously everything depends upon relations. So one sign that is a word, you can treat it as a word, but Saussure used it in terms of a morpheme, and that interacts with each other, and that's why the entire text becomes meaningful. So how this thing happens, I'll give you the one demonstration from a sonnet written by Shakespeare, much anthologized. That is, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. So again, like we have a play, each word interacts with other word. So you have these semantic relations, syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationship. And these syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationships, again, they are posited by Ferdinand de Saussure. So what is the syntagmatic? Like you have 2 axes, like a vertical axis and you have vertical axis and the horizontal axis. So at syntagmatic level, you have one word interacting with other word. So let's say shall is interacting with I is interacting with compare, the So like the syntax of the language, for example, the syntax of English language is subject, verb, and object. The basic word order of English language is subject, verb, and object. But when it comes to Hindi language, then it is subject, object, and verb. There's a change. So here Shakespeare is not saying I shall compare thee to a summer's day, but Shakespeare is saying shall I compare thee to a summer's day. At the same time, you can raise the question like it is not an ordinary question of inquiry, because Shakespeare is not expecting a response from his audience, but Shakespeare is raising a rhetorical question, and Shakespeare is providing the answer to the question in the next lines, like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May likewise. At the same time, you have paradigmatic relationship, that is the relationship of choices that you have. So Shakespeare is not saying, shall I compare thee to a spring's morning? Shakespeare is not saying, thou art more beautiful and more calm. So that is again, but these choices are available with Shakespeare. And if you want to make this entire thing more contextual, then definitely you can ask your students that no lover in India can say these lines to a beloved, that shall I compare thee to a summer's day, because summers in India are quite harsh, quite horrible. So it will become an insult that, okay, you are comparing me with the summer, and why you are comparing me with the summer? So the more polite way of saying in India or in like in tropical countries, like, shall I compare thee to a spring's morning? So that type of thing is there. So we have these choices all the time. And once we have these relationships, syntagmatic and paradigmatic, we construct an entire text. Because when it comes to writing in English, then we write from left to right, and then top to bottom, and then entire text is woven very nicely following these two semantic relations, syntagmatic and paradigmatic. So these two relations, like here you have two axes, like x-axis for syntagmatic relationship and y-axis is for paradigmatic relationship, and you find these relationships all the time. At sound level, you find like cat is a cat because cat is not sad, sat is a sat because sat is not mad. And if I raise the question like, what is the difference between these three words, then you will definitely say like the first letter is different, or when you have some knowledge of phonetics and phonology, then you will say first sound is different. So the paradigmatic relationship is in play here as well. Let's say you are a poet and I give you first line, the sun is shining bright, and the condition is like rhyme the end rhyme. So in the second, whatever the second line, you must rhyme it with the first one. So what you will write, like, this is a lovely sight, or a word different than sight, but something rhyming with bright. So again, you have a paradigmatic level that you can also teach a student that, okay, how the text is constituted. Then at syntactic level, like the cat sat on the mat, and if you change the cat with the dog, then it will become paradigmatic relationship. But you can't say cat the, on, sat, mat the, it will become meaningless. So with syntagmatic relationship, you have this combination and co-occurrence restriction. But when it comes to paradigmatic relationship, then you have a relationship of contrast and substitution. Now this one example, this is the last example I'm giving you, that how you can employ or how you can direct your students to use pedagogical stylistics. Now this is again a hymn, a liturgical prayer. And if you give your students this thing, Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, who of thy tender mercy didst give thine only Son, Jesus Christ, to suffer death upon the cross for our redemption. And if you ask your student, okay, what do you understand by this? Then there is a possibility that a student will come with this reply that God gives his only Son, Jesus, to save human beings, and he died for us. But this type of one-liner, one sentence interpretation is not valid actually, because we have lots of expectation from our student. So students, if they have some linguistic skills, they know about the language, how language works, what are the things in the language, they can have a better interpretation. And for that purpose, I have highlighted these words. For example, students, if they read the first phrase, Almighty God, and if they have some knowledge of linguistics, then they know like Almighty God is in a vocative case. So why something is in vocative case? Because vocative case is used to address someone, and here we are addressing God. So the one meaning is like we are addressing God, directly. There is no problem in that. Another meaning is like we do not require a mediator because we can directly communicate with the God. That's why it is in the vocative case. So that interpretation student can also write our Heavenly Father. Then you can see like the capital F and capital S both are in capitonym. Now why they are in capitonym? Why they are in capital letters? They are in capital letters because here we are not highlighting the biological relationship between a father and son, but here we are highlighting the spiritual relationship between a father and son. So that interpretation is also a valid interpretation supported with linguistic evidence. We can see that certain words are archaic words, but still they are in fashion. For thy, thine, didst. So you can raise, or student can raise a question like why there is no replacement for these words, because new words are available, but still we are using old words. Why? Because old is gold. Because we have a fascination for old things. And once we know like this hymn, this liturgical prayer is written hundreds of years back, then we have more reverence for it. So that's why we want like these few words will be there. There is no problem. We understand it's their meaning. There is no problem. At the same time, like there is inversion of the syntax. So present day English, no one will say who of thy tender mercy. Present day we will say the tender mercy of whom. But again, like the inversing of the syntax. So inversing of the syntax is a very clever wordplay poets quite often use. And similarly, we have a term like poetic license for that. And again, here we find the inversion of the word order. And then we have these three words like suffer, death, cross, and redemption. They are in yellow font. So why they are in yellow? Because they are associated with each other. So they are collocations. One word is associated with other word for meaning sake. So that way students can add more meaning. And once they have this, then in place of simply saying God gives his only son, Jesus, to save human beings and he died for us, the student can say these many things like text begins with a vocative expression that directly addresses God, by which the connection between the addressee and address is well established. Also, the inversion of syntax topicalizes God, but this time it is substituted by the relative pronoun who. The archaic use of the past tense auxiliary did establishes its link, indicating that the prayer is quite ancient and has been used by ancestors as well. The capitalization is an example of capitonym, which removes it from the biological relation and establishes heavenly connection. The use of thy and thine is also in line with Old English, but it has also an alliterative function. The collocation is well suited for the religious purpose. So you can see like lots of creativity. It's the same thing you can say in a new way, and people will also appreciate. Okay, a very simple thing, and you have added new flavor to it. So that's all from my end, and I thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you all. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful session and it was very excellent. It was excellent and very captivating, so informative. And we were just spellbound. The way you elaborated the stylistic, that is style, interpretations with reference to linguistics and literature in scientific manner was amazing. The illustration of William Blake's poem The Tiger and other instances, the new discourse shifting to topic were so insightful, sir. And the deliberation in interpretations, relations, narrative was really thought provoking. It was an eye opener actually, was for understanding the basics of paraphrasing and clarification of concepts. We really need to learn the right or appropriate pedagogies for teaching and learning. The example of Shakespeare's sonnet, Shall I Compare Thee, was wonderful. Actually, we learned a lot, sir, and life is a continuous process of learning. And we are fortunate that we are part of iSPELL, that we get privilege of learning by such outstanding intellectuals. Thank you once again for benefiting, and it was so insightful and informative, sir. I would like to quote from Sanskrit for learning. I would like to share some lines. अन्नदानम परम दानम विद्यादानम अतः परम अन्ननेन शनिका तृप्ति ही याव जीवम च विद्या means giving tool to the hungry is a great donation but donation of the knowledge is considered important among all other donations. By food, one's hunger is fulfilled, one can survive at that point of time, whereas the knowledge attained helps one to survive full life. So now the forum is open for question round. If anyone having a query can put forth, please. If anyone is having any query, can come.
Vipula ma'am, there are questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Please take it up.
Yes. The chat. I'm not getting actually.
Dividi sir, there is a question by Pushpa Puamma, who has asked, how does contrastive analysis promote language learning? Could you please elaborate on this?
Okay. So when we deal with contrastive analysis, then basically our focus is on the cultural meaning rather than the dictionary meaning that is there. So at the term says contrastive, then obviously we are reading a text, obviously not in isolation. That means we are we are employing intertextuality. That is the thing with contrastive analysis, but the more focus is on the cultural perspective. So a text is situated in a context. That is more important. That is the crux of contrastive analysis. So a good morning has different connotation. If a student comes late in the class and teacher says good morning, that means like teacher is indicating that you are late. So that is a connotative meaning associated with that. So a word burqa has a different connotation, like a sindoor has a different connotation. So you are dealing not simply with the dictionary meaning, you are not dealing with simply the formalist approach of the text, but you are situating text into some context. So once you situate a text into some context, then you have many meaningfulness. So that many meaningfulness, that heteroglossia, as stated by Mikhail Bakhtin, comes into play, and obviously your interpretation will become better, and your students will also learn how to situate a text in certain context. So it's not like reading in isolation, but becoming an insider of the text and then going for the interpretation. That's my answer.
Sir, could it be also the goal of contrastive analysis is to predict linguistic difficulties experienced during the acquisition of a second language?
Okay, you are talking in terms of that acquisition and the learning part. I thought like you asked for in terms of literature.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I thought in that direction that you are asking in terms of literature. Otherwise, this contrastive analysis, we have this contrastive analysis when we teach English language to students, and we try to think of like students, they have mother tongue influence as well on their language.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking in different because my
I thought like contrastive analysis is the systematic comparison of two or more languages.
There is a
identifying structural differences and similarities. Yeah.
There is a book by Rod Ellis, and the Rod Ellis they actually work on this contrastive and error analysis basically. So their focus, this Rod and Ellis, their focus is on this contrastive and error analysis, and so they worked on like how the learning takes place because most of the time when we look at countries like India, then English is not the mother tongue of almost every Indian. Like we have learned English language when we have entered into some formal institution. So basically, when we like in place of saying like I am like I'm understanding you. So like generally we do not use understand with ing, or like when some teacher who is like very irritated and says like you are eating my head, fine. So like simply translating whatever is in into English. So these are the things that are there. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for.
Fine, fine.
Yeah.
Sir, what is the difference between literary stylistics and linguistic stylistics?
Stylistics, first commonality is like stylistic is common. So we are on the safer side that stylistic is common. Now we need to deal with the modifiers. What is one modifier? One modifier is literary stylistics. Another modifier is linguistic stylistics. So again, like these are simply modifiers, but the thing is like, again, the stylistic has the more role to play. So when you are applying linguistic tools to analyze a text, that is literary analysis, literary stylistics as well as linguistic analysis, that I can say. Application of linguistic tool to the different way of saying the same thing, but the thing is like applying linguistic tools to literary text. That is either you can say literary stylistics or you can say linguistic stylistics.
But teaching through linguistic stylistic any literary work is difficult for us because the students do not have basic knowledge of linguistics, say syntax or other stylistics and all.
No, the thing is like even many teachers who are teaching literature, they also do not have the knowledge of linguistics. That is the fact. And for that reason, there is lots of a problem when they try to analyze a literary text. And once we do away with linguistics and simply take literature and interpretation, then the problem is of subjectivity. Then once you have lots of subjectivity, then how can you validate that subjectivity without linguistic evidence? So that problem arises, and then obviously the validation of an interpretation becomes a problem. And for that purpose, most of the time, what do we have? We have simply a paraphrase. So most of the time, students, they produce paraphrase. When they read a poetry, they simply provide a paraphrase, no critical analysis, because they do not have the tools to analyze that particular language. They do not know about the syntax, because there are many definitions of poetry, but my personal definition of poetry is one-liner. Poetry is syntax. So if you take care of your syntax, you can become a great poet. So that is like poetry is simply syntax. If you have an understanding of syntax, if you know how to play with the words, then you will become a good poet. Otherwise, that I want to say.
Very true. Sir, one more point I wanted you to explain or give your suggestion. Suppose we want to write a research paper or a thesis taking a stylistic study of a particular literary work. What aspects should we deal with?
Stylistics, when it comes to stylistics, there are thousands of papers, because once you go to JSTOR, there is a site, JSTOR. And if you try to find out, if you just type stylistics, then you will find more than 6,000 papers written on stylistics. So first problem is like the problem of novelty that will come, that what new you are adding to this field, that will become an area of concern. So simply, I will not suggest that you should title your paper like stylistic study of this poem, stylistic study of that poem. That is a bad idea, because as I said, like we have hundreds and thousands of papers written on stylistics, and they are brilliant papers. Like still, if we read them, then we will get some good insight. So that is the thing. First thing is like you need to one need to get acquainted with the things that are already done. So like you must have read like 150 or 100 papers written on stylistics, and then you can think of like, okay, these topics are not taken care of. So for example, Like if you do a stylistic analysis of Hanuman Chalisa, then you have more chances to get published. Fine. Then you do a stylistic analysis of some novel. So that thing you can do. I tell always my researchers that once you undertake a task of conducting a research, then act locally and think globally. So
Right.
this is generally a thing. Like I will write it like act locally and think globally. So that I always tell my student that select a topic that is very local
Yeah.
and you make it global. And how you can make it global, that is up to you. So you need to take a theoretical perspective. You can take anything that you can make it global, but act locally. If you want to get published, if you want to have an authority on a particular topic, because you can't challenge a European on Pride and Prejudice. Fine. So you have written like how brilliant you write anything on Pride and Prejudice. You can't challenge an American. You can't challenge a European person. So the thing is like you need to select some topic that is very local to you, your local folk tales, your local narratives, and then apply something that is like globally accepted theoretical framework.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for solving all the queries. Thank you once again for your deep, knowledgeable deliberation by which we all have been benefited. Now, in the continuation of array, I request our chairperson, Dr. Archana.
Hello. Can I ask a question? Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Please.
We can't hear you.
Hello, is there any question?
Yes, sir, by Ashok Fasdeva, sir.
Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please unmute yourself, then raise the question. I think the problem is with the microphone.
Sasdeva sir, can you? Hello? Sasdeva sir, can you unmute yourself? Dr. Vipula, you can proceed further.
Yes, sir. So, in the continuation of array, I request our chairperson, Dr. Archana Singh, to address us, please. And before that, I would like to share a brief bio note of ma'am. Dr. Archana Singh is an assistant professor and head of the Department of English, Bhanu Pratap Dev Government PG College, North Buster, Kangar. She has been teaching English language and literature to undergraduate and postgraduate students for the last 27 years. She has published more than 30 scholarly papers in national and international conferences held in Cape Town, South Africa. Ma'am has also prepared a module for e-Pathshala. Her area of interest is English, drama, and linguistics. Today, we are privileged to have ma'am among us. I request Archana ma'am to address, please. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for this lovely introduction. So, incipiently, as I am a great lover of music, so am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So, incipiently, as I am a great lover of music, so I cannot refrain myself by giving my heartfelt tribute to Lata Mangeshkar ji, because where words fail, music speaks, and her golden voice is immortal and will continue to echo in the hearts of every Indian. And here I want to quote these 4 lines by Mary Elizabeth Fry, and I think it seems that these lines have been written only for Lata Mangeshkar ji, Do not stand at my grave and cry, I'm not there, I did not die. When you awaken in the morning's hush of quiet birds, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circle flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. So do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. First of all, respected Dr. Dwivedi and all the scholars present here, very good evening to one and all. First of all, I am very much thankful to the organizers of this event for giving me an opportunity to chair this scholarly session. Today's topic was pedagogical stylistics, a new approach to language learning. Linguistics is my area of interest, and I love to read and write about it. But today, I came to know many new aspects of linguistics, especially pedagogical stylistics. Thank you very much, Dwivedi sir, for your insightful deliberation. Pedagogical stylistic is a new trend that is concerned with teaching stylistics in the classroom. Generally, it refers to the method and practices of a teacher. Pedagogy has historically and conceptually always been close to the core of what linguistics is all about. It enhances the awareness of students about the language of the text they are analyzing. To analyze the text, which include analyzing the formal properties of the text like phonology, vocabulary, syntax, and relationship between the sentences. Stylistics goes beyond the formal features of the text. So at the very outset, you have very systematically defined stylistics. You talked about the last three letters about in stylistics, that ICS, which is very significant. And you have talked about that stylistics is nothing but a scientific study of language, a scientific study of anything written. Then you have also talked about register, because every field has its own language, which we call jargon. So we have to analyze each and everything. Now, stylistics has two aspects. One is linguistics, which is objective analysis, then literature, which is subjective interpretation. And this stylistic actually works like a bridge between linguistics and literature or literary analysis. Then you have given the reference of Ferdinand de Saussure's A Course in General Linguistics, where he talked, where Ferdinand Saussure has written, then spoken is more important than writing, or speaking anything comes first than the writing. And we know that any child, first he learns to speak, then to write. So here again, two things are meeting. One is speaking and second is writing. And the stylistics here again works as a bridge between these two. Then you have talked about the nature of linguistics analysis and literary analysis. Literary analysis is subjective and linguistic analysis is objective. And now the question arises that why do we require linguistics? We require linguistics to remove some flaws of literary analysis. And then you have given that analysis of text can be done on the basis of 3 R's. And you have given these 3 R's are rigorous, retrievable, and then replicable. Then you have given a very a different interpretation of Tiger by William Blake. And then you have also said that any kind of interpretation cannot be accepted. Then, then you talked about the contextual background of reader or the writer is very much important. And it should be done within the socio-cultural context within which reading and writing take place. And contextual factors such as the cultural background of the readers and also the cultural background of the writers must be taken into consideration. Here I want to take the example of Shakespeare's sonnet, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" When we read it in Indian context, then it will be very funny because we cannot compare anyone who is so beautiful with a summer's day. But in England, it is possible. So that's why the contextual factors are very important. Then you have given pedagogical, stylistic, you have given some models, teaching model, then you have talked about interaction, then you talked about intertextuality, and then you have also emphasized that why this linguistic analysis or literary analysis is important, because then we can retell something, we can reinterpret something. And here I want to give you one example. I was reading somewhere that a woman, she was interpreting Ramayana, and then she writes, actually that article was in Hindi, there she writes that I would not have much respect for Sita if she decided to remain with Ram. मुझे माता सीता के लिए उतना सम्मान नहीं होता यदि वो लास्ट में राम के साथ रहने को तैयार हो जाती. So this is a kind of reinterpretation. This is a kind of, we can say, a retelling of Ramayana. So that's why this kind of stylistic analysis or literary analysis are very important. Then you have talked about heuristic interaction, interactive learning, where you said that students must be encouraged. And this type of pedagogical stylistic, students or readers are actually in the center. They are actually in the center. And they should read not only the meaning which is in the center, but they should understand the meanings which are in the margins. And because then you talked about that meaning or interpretation or explanation is not, it cannot be ended at one point. It is moving. And you cannot get a final interpretation of anything. And text cannot be detached from other necessary participants in a literary text because there are four participants. One is the producer or who produce, or we can say the production of that literary text, and that is writer. Then reception. Reception is carried out by readers. Then post-production, that is generally done by the critics. And then the mediation, which has been done by more than one person, like any institution, like newspapers or anything. Now, when students know that there are a variety of patterns which provoke a different response, they can enhance their understanding of some patterns that have not been encountered before. So, readers should not act in a passive way, and they are the whole soul for any literary text, and they should enrich meaning through their own cultural and linguistics experience. So that's all. And really, sir, your deliberation was very insightful, full of knowledge, very thought-provoking. And I have also come to know many new things about linguistics. And when we talk about pedagogical stylistic, there are some more things One is transformational analysis, although you have already talked about this. And that is, and you have already told about rewriting, then transformation, then registration. Some cyberspace classrooms are also there, where spoken language can be stored on a computer for the sake of interpretation and analysis. And spoken language can also be interpreted. So what I think that in our syllabus, generally, in the first unit, I don't know about other states, but in MP or Chhattisgarh, we have, in the first unit, we have annotation, where we have to give the explanation, literary explanation of the lines, whether it is poetry or prose. I think that stylistic analysis should also be included in the syllabus. That is very much necessary, because what I think that if I have a paper on linguistics, then only I have a subject of linguistics while I was doing MA or while I was doing MPhil. If I had a subject linguistics, then only I will be able to do the stylistic analysis. Otherwise, I can't do. Even many people here, many teachers who have not done anything on linguistics, they cannot do stylistic analysis. But it is very much necessary that everybody who is a teacher of literature should know of language, or rather I should say, who is a teacher of language, must know what is the stylistic analysis. So that's all from my end. And at the very end, I would like to quote 2 lines that has been recited by Dwivedi sir on Hindi Divas that I have watched on YouTube. And those 4 lines are, आंखें भराने को एक गम काफी है, बारिश बिन बादल कभी नहीं आती, इंसान में इंसानियत होनी चाहिए, सूरत कैसी भी हो, सीरत अच्छी होनी चाहिए. So, thank you very much, sir. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Videos.
Yes, Vipla ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Your words really added the value to the session. Your words really added the value to the session. The way you have analyzed is truly remarkable and thought-provoking. Beautifully you have narrated, ma'am. Thank you once again. We truly agree with the lines of Shashi Rashaf. When you educate one person, you can change a life. When you educate many, you can change the world. So we really enjoyed the sessions with such scholarly and accomplished intellectuals. Now I request Pramod Higle sir and Ghanshyam sir for the certificates part 3.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vipla. Indeed, it's a pleasure and honor to have MOC on this platform, and you have really done well. And iSPELL always facilitates to elevate people. We bring the people on the platform of iSPELL, and many of them, they do ask in the chat box, do you provide certificate for attending? We do not provide certificate for attending, but we felicitate people to elevate themselves and to certify themselves and to come onto the platform of iSPELL as the speakers or the chairpersons or the master of ceremonies or the event coordinators, so that they can certify themselves quite well. Because we always believe we are not the people to certify the individual, but the individual has the immense potentiality to certify himself or herself. And that's what has been done by Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi ji today, by deliberating on various issues related to stylistics in such a easy way and in such a great way that we have learned a lot from him today. Indeed, it's an honor for iSPELL to have Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi from Jammu, the Crown of India, who is elaborating on various issues related to stylistics and then teaching of English language. This certificate on behalf of iSPELL goes to Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi for doing the honors. Sir, this is a token of love and gratitude from iSPELL. Kindly accept it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Always it's a pleasure to have the chairperson who not only sums up the entire deliberation, but at the same time gives input, his or her own input to it. And for that, doing the honors, Dr. Archana Singh is being rewarded with this certificate as a token of gratitude from iSPELL. And she is also the convener of iSPELL Chhattisgarh Forum. Kindly accept this, Dr. Archana Singh, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Always we need the captain to take the ship even in means difficult situation also, and being the prospero of the ship, I present this certificate to Dr. Vipula Mathur for leading us to the end of this particular session on stylistics, and you have really done well. You have mastered it quite well. So this certificate is a token of gratitude from iSPELL to Dr. Vipula Mathur.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Highly obliged. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
And
you.
this is our next Sunday's event, wherein we are going to have Professor S.Z.H. Abidi sir, who is the retired professor from the University of Lucknow. And the chairperson will be Kamaljit Yadav, and Shamulima Saikya is going to be the master of ceremonies. And we are going to discuss on major issues in feminist literary criticism. And I think most of us in India, we know S.Z.H. Abidi sir quite well. And he is the one, and as Dr. Amitabh Vikram Dwivedi sir has said, we should think locally and act globally. It means that we should go global. Global is the combination of global and local. So we need to go global, and global is nothing but being vocal. So let us all be vocal on the platform of iSPELL to spell, so that all eyes can become we, and then entire the world will spell as we spell. So thank you very much to each one of you for joining us. Over to Dr. Vipula Mathur.
Thank you, sir. I would like to invite respected Anupma Vora ma'am, if she wishes to share a few words, ma'am. Is Anupma ma'am there? Okay, I think ma'am is not there. Okay, fine. Okay, thank you so much. On the behalf of iSPELL family, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our guests, respected Amitabh sir, respected Archana ma'am, for your gracious presence, ma'am and sir. You spared your valuable time for us and imparted such an enlightening sessions. I extend my heartfelt thanks to respected Ghansham sir, Anupma ma'am, Shamta Chaudhary ma'am, who always have been so supportive and guiding force behind us. And a special thanks to our event coordinator, respected Pramod Dhingle sir, without whom the event would not have been successful at all. Thanks a ton to all the leaders, members of the forum, all participants, research scholars, and students who have joined the session and made it successful. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to moderate the session on this platform. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.